Hey, Thomas.
Hey, Betsy. Wow, things are exploding in D.C.
Yeah, I know. Did you see the Truth News headlines? The last two I've pushed out? There is so much stuff happening. But I have to tell you, I just got an email in from Carol. She's one of our agents out there in the field. And if you're new to our show, you don't know what the heck's going on. We've laid down these network lines a long time ago. We have a pretty amazing global network, and we get reports in daily from people of what they're hearing on the ground. And Carol just reported in that BBC Radio 4 has been running almost repeatedly all day long the following topics: the justifiable purge of InfoWars and Alex Jones from media platforms, the damaging effects of fake alt-media conspiracy stories such as Sandy Hook was a false flag and the moon landings were faked, and then should the right-wing activist Tommy Robinson be allowed to appear on the BBC. And so it looks like the globalists are in panic mode, and you're going to take us there. What are you seeing?
Well, Tommy Robinson still isn't free. He has to go back to court, and of course they're going to prosecute him. And they look at what they did to him. You see, this is what they're doing here in America now. What happened in Britain is happening now here in America. And we pointed this out. The European Union passed the GDPR. I correct myself. The other day I said the RGDP. The GDPR, which was also called Article 13, when that was passed, that was the end of free speech in Europe, because they used the excuse of, what a surprise, Russian interference in their elections to basically clamp down on any free speech whatsoever, not just these major corporations who have their fingers in America so deeply that they might as well be government agencies, these monopolies, these Silicon Valley fake tech companies that were paid for by American tax dollars. What is going on is just absolutely huge. Tommy Robinson's the tip of the iceberg, but they're done there. If you looked into what's really going on, you'll see, I don't know how, in my opinion, I don't know how they're going to recover. Julian Assange, what's happening with him? Well, we went over the fact that there's now a new law that America just signed on to with the Organization of American States that specifically defines exactly what happens to someone who is an asylum seeker when they are in an embassy, and what the procedures are to make sure that they can, in fact, continue in their asylum and not just be picked up on the way to the airport. Well, that's exactly the situation with Julian Assange. So when Mark Warner of the Senate Intelligence Committee, who, it's embarrassing that this Democrat, who is probably one of the most corrupt that there is, runs that committee, though Richard Burr, the Republican who should be running it, is also completely corrupt. Dianne Feinstein, she was on that committee until she stepped down to move over to the Judiciary Committee to focus all of her time on trying to cover her tracks for what she's done in her criminal activities.
Yeah, she's corrupt and daft.
So that committee...
And don't forget Marco Rubio.
Marco Rubio's on that committee. He's taking up where Dianne Feinstein left off. He says give Mueller all that he wants, all the time he wants. Doesn't matter, years, 8 years, whatever. Oh no, Mueller's fine. Don't worry. And don't appoint a special counsel to look into the Democrats. But out of that committee, of course, we know that there is now an invitation to Julian Assange to come and testify. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, I think.
Doesn't everybody realize that Warren or Burr are trying to cover their butts because they're trying to get Assange cornered to figure out what he knows or what he would tell?
Well, yeah, I was going to say it's the stupidest thing ever out of that committee. But wait, there's something that was stupider. Same person, Mark Warner, in January of 2016, had his aides, well, actually, it was James Wolfe, the head aide for the Senate Intelligence Committee, so he's an intelligence staffer. He, through Victoria Nuland's assistant, actually was in direct communication with Christopher Steele long before anybody says Christopher Steele was hired to do this dossier. We said it because we knew this happened, because it had come out, and we had verified that it had come out. So James Wolfe, Daniel Jones, and then also, we pointed this out also early on, that John McCain was part of this from the beginning, and we want to tap ourselves on the back, pat ourselves very nicely. were the only ones who said John McCain was in on it from the beginning with Andrew Wood, and he sent David Kramer, his person from the McCain Institute, to actually help instigate this entire thing from the beginning.
Well, there are other people that are saying it now, but what you're saying is you said it first.
Yeah, we said it first.
I agree.
We said it way back
We said,
there.
well, duh, look at John McCain.
And we wrote about it, so we can stand on the words that we've written. So out of that committee, Christopher Steele was invited to come with his concerns that he shared with Bruce Orr, and this has now come out because of Chuck Grassley, Senator Chuck Grassley, and the Judicial Committee finally got some documents, and Nunes says he has his documents, and when things are now, the tide is going out because a tsunami's coming in, and if you know a tsunami, when the tide goes out, when a tsunami's coming in, it looks like the ocean is emptied. Well, that's what's happening right now because the DOJ and FBI had to give these documents. So Bruce Orr and all of his criminality, a part of his criminality, and his wife, Nellie Orr, the way she worked with Fusion GPS, and so on and so forth. But then Daniel Jones picked up where Fusion GPS left off. So don't think for a second that the Senate Intelligence Committee has stopped their war against Trump. No, not for 1 second. Thank you very much, Marco Rubio. So what really was going on? Richard Burr said that Christopher Steele would have to come and testify without being given any kind of, whatever. He'd just come and testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee. These lies that Christopher Steele had developed. Why did Christopher Steele develop those lies about Trump? Well, he hated Trump. He didn't want to get in office. He had been working for America as an informant when he was with MI5, MI6, and Orbis International, and he was actually being directed by people above him. Sir Richard Dearlove, Andrew Wood, as I mentioned, Alexander Downer. And who were they? They were friends of Hillary Clinton. Alexander Downer gave $78 million to the Clinton Foundation for AIDS drugs in Australia. Why would anything like that happen? So you get all these spies all involved, and Christopher Steele is coming over telling Bruce Orr, because he's been told by his bosses, which included Jeffrey Patty, which includes Lord Malloch Brown. And
if people don't know who Jeffrey Patty is, you would look at to the Privy Council, Richard Dearlove, some of these names that aren't typical American names, we're looking over here in England.
British meddling in our election. And so out of that Senate Intelligence Committee, they said, Mark Warner even wrote letters that we've seen that he said, please, Christopher Steele, come over and testify. What is then later we find in the Trump dossier, which is all garbage. There was no truth in it whatsoever. So we have Mark Warner sallying up to a British spy who's being paid by the Democratic National Committee through Fusion GPS and Perkins Coie, their law firm, to come up with garbage on Trump, which Cody Shearer, who's in her campaign, Sidney Blumenthal, always get poor Blumenthal's name wrong. I want it to get right when they take him to jail, so it'll be on his jumper properly. So all these people that were involved in creating that dossier, that also included the CIA and John Brennan and his garbage through a number of people I can name, which I've named so many times before. But the Crossfire Hurricane, it was not it was an operation. It wasn't an investigation. It was never an investigation. Later it turned into what they called an insurance policy. But this was well known from Obama's administration all the way down through all the intelligence communities, and specifically by Adam Schiff and the Gang of Eight. He's one of the Gang of Eight, which would be the intelligence head of the Congress and the head of the Intelligence Committee in the Congress and in the Senate, and then the leader of the major leader, so that's 8. And they were informed separately by Brennan that he was doing this, and Brennan told every one of them a different story. But anyway, he told Devin Nunes very little. So, but that's because had he told Devin Nunes the truth back then, none of this would have happened. So John Brennan was the one lying to the Gang of Eight, who's supposed to be the oversight for the intelligence community. And then the Senate Intelligence Committee is supposed to be the ultimate oversight. It's a permanent select committee. This is supposed to be the top dogs in the country, making sure that the intelligence community does not go foul. Well, they did. And they used all their intelligence staffers. And we know it because James Wolfe came out He's been charged with leaks because he gave Allie Watson so much stuff that you can look back and she only became a star because of exactly what she was getting from him. And then Daniel Jones went out and picked up where Fusion GPS left off when Christopher Steele got busted. Now, this is the amazing thing. Christopher Steele did not come over to testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee because Richard Burr would not sign off on it. Mark Warner signed off on it. And all these intelligence staffers were all in on it. And it went back to the State Department, and Victoria Nuland literally, and now we know with Obama insiders, had two people who were basically very upset over the whole Ukrainian thing. And so what we've pointed out, that it was the Atlantic Council, which is the propaganda arm of NATO, that they were using Ukrainians, Alexandra Chalupa. This is all out in the news now. Everything we've been pointing out is in all the really good articles in the news going on. And even the mainstream media is having to report some of this.
So if it is a part of NATO, an arm of NATO, then American taxpayers, once again, are paying for this.
Absolutely. And they are the ones that just got hired by Facebook. George Soros gave the money. So Facebook paid almost nothing for the Atlantic Council's digital forensic research laboratory to come in and set up the Truth ministry here in America. Same thing for YouTube and same thing for Google. And Google has its news, digital news initiative, which is now controlling what Avid is putting on the prompter screens for all of the news agencies, except for a little bit of Fox. Some of those people don't read it. But who owns 10% of Avid? Dianne Feinstein's husband.
Richard C. Bloom.
Dianne Feinstein owns 10% of the power to determine what the news reads. Isn't that an amazing thing? Oh, Dianne Feinstein was the person in the Senate Intelligence Committee that really started all of this. And it was her aide, Daniel Jones, who went out and now created Penn Quarter Group, $50 million. A lot from Soros, a lot from Russian oligarchs like Oleg Deripaski and Leonid Blavatnik. $50 million to continue a smear campaign with false dossier information junk like that against Trump continuously to this day. That's what Mueller is actually using as some of his impetus to go after the true dirt. Notice that Mueller and Eric Schneiderman, the Attorney General of New York, and Preet Bharara, the one who gave the Russian spy, the only real Russian spy in all of this. Oh, by the way, it was John McCain who gave the name Natalia Veselnitskaya, and the other Russian agents who were not supposed to be in this country. The Victoria Nuland had to get them a special visa approved by, I believe it was John Kerry at that point, but approved by the sitting Attorney General, whether it was Loretta Lynch, John Kerry, Sally Yates, don't know which one, can't remember. But anyway, they got the approval to bring her into the country so that she could sit at a testimonial hearing where she said nothing at the Congress. And then she met with Glenn Simpson before and after she met with Donald Jr. And now they're bringing up that the Russian singer that was also there, friend of Rob Goldstone, is also a Russian spy. Well, they were all Russian spies, and they were being tapped into by the General Communications Headquarters, which is the NSA of the Brits. Robert Hannigan made a deal with John Brennan. This is all well known. It's all out there. I can't even name all the articles you'll find this in. You just read anywhere, you'll see it. And so the things we've been telling you, the storyline we've been telling you is now becoming unraveled. That's the tide going out because the tsunami's coming in. It's yes. The red tsunami.
But the other thing too, Thomas, we sit here in America and we're telling the story from our point of view, but we have listeners all over the world. And as they're listening, they're picking up names of people that interface with their country, and then they're connecting the dots, because I see these emails come in all the time. I mean, the whole world is awakening to this huge criminality.
Christopher Steele is being sued in America and in Britain simultaneously, 2 lawsuits here. And the judge sitting on one of them is best friends of John Podesta, the person who paid $12 million to Fusion GPS, who paid Christopher Steele to create the fake dossier, which was, again, an accumulation of the weaponized American intelligence community's attempt to smear Trump. But they had nothing. And that's the reason that this critical point I'm about to say, if you do not understand this, you don't get it. As I say again and again, WikiLeaks, by the way, WikiLeaks ain't coming, and neither is Kim.com going to testify. Either one could testify there was no hacking of the Democratic National Committee server. That's a lie. So they won't have, they'd put Julian Assange in jail. They've already said they'd put him in jail. And the trumped up charges are what? It's called free speech. How about New York Times or Washington Post giving us, how about if we say we're going to put them in jail if they don't tell us who their anonymous sources are?
I don't know. I have a big question about whether Julian Assange is there. We haven't seen or heard from him. And plus we have this mysterious couch being moved out of the embassy. And a close-up picture that I was able to zoom in on looks similarly to what you would expect Julian Assange to look like. So are the senators going to get a big surprise when they find out he's not there?
Betsy, that's a big mystery because there's...
It is a mystery. I'm not saying...
Trump went over there. Things got stirred up. This law I just mentioned got passed, which is specifically focusing Julian Assange's case. He could be missing. No one's seen him. He's gone off the radar for what? For saying that the gas attack was fake? Anybody who didn't know that gas attack in England was fake was just not looking at it properly. And then they closed him down because of that. And who knows? Some say he's sick. Some say he's in a hospital. Some say he's already been spirited out. Who knows? Now he gets this. It'll be fascinating to see if he responds. But it's a stupid offer. And it's the offer that is a setup. And it's a setup by Mark Warner, who's being basically running what should be a Republican-led committee, which it is not. It's a Dianne Feinstein absolute mess. And if we get into all the leaks that came out of there, we have to remember that John McCain drove all of this from the beginning, which we pointed out. We were the only ones who pointed that out. And it was his number one aide, Henry Kerner, who was the mastermind actually pushing all these agencies all at once because he had complete McCain immunity and he acted with impunity, just like McCain against the Logan Act. He goes over to countries and does deals. He does arms deals. He starts wars.
Well,
McCain is an evil person.
John Kerry is too.
Oh, John Kerry, he just sold out. He let 2,500 Iranians come in on the Iranian deal. 2,500 Iranian spies have come in. And we don't know their names because John Kerry made sure that they filtered in without being tracked. He was paid under the table. We know that because Iran has said that he was. Many people were paid under the table. And now Angela Merkel tried to give $400 million just so that they can keep their terror machine going.
Let's go back to that letter that Grassley sent the Department of Justice a while back. Tell us about that.
Grassley demanded that Christopher Steele be prosecuted. He demanded the Justice Department and that the FBI do a full investigation. Why? The two lawsuits against Steele in America, and there's also two in Britain, one of them is from a Russian tech guy, Alexei Gubarev, and the other one is from the three Alpha Bank oligarchs who are mentioned in the dossier. So they're suing Steele up one side, down the other. That's how we get most of this information, because in deposition, Steele is trying to cover his rear and saying none of it was ever verified. It was never supposed to be made public. Here's Steele's defense. Steele says, no, this is opposition research. You were allowed to attack the opposition. And then they say, but you're a foreign agent. No, I'm in the Five Eyes, so it's okay. I already have national security approval. I have a top secret security clearance because I am an agent for the Department of Justice, the FBI, the CIA, and everybody else. I've been paid just like Stephen Halper, the guy used to frame Trump's team. Everyone on Trump's team that Stephen Halper could try to frame: Carter Page, Sam Clovis, George Papadopoulos. So, what was really going on there? We were paying Christopher Steele to attack Donald Trump in an election because Obama weaponized his entire administration, basically, and Hillary was right there giving him directives, and Comey was anxious. Comey committed 28 crimes of treason that we know of, and there's probably many others. So if you follow that article, you'll see that we named this and we put it in a timeline before anybody ever. And there's a whole lot of other crimes that haven't come out yet, but it's all coming out because the light's coming on, the rats are running, and we are filming it, and we're watching the rat lines, and we are plugging up every hole of every rat line as those rats are jumping out.
Okay, so Christopher Steele, let's go back here. You say that he was paid by us, the American taxpayer, to do all of this, right? Is that what you mean by that?
And $180,000 from Fusion GPS. And they spent $12 million on getting this dossier together, so he was kind of ripped off.
All right. But we also know that he has connections to the Privy Council, and he could have been getting instructions there. He may have made arrangements where both sides were paying him to do this job.
Sir Richard Dearlove was his boss, and that's who told him what to do. This was all over the British news.
Well, then he's making out everybody's paying him to do this.
Oh, he was even given a position. They even created an institute for him to give him a position, and then they touted him on the news as Trump's senior foreign policy advisor. Trump had never met with him, never talked with him, and just like Carter Page, who was never in a single meeting, Papadopoulos himself was only in 2 meetings, and he put forth a paper that he'd put forth everywhere, and he'd already worked for one other campaign before that, so he was a nothing. But in England, he was huge. Boris Johnson met with him personally. Everybody met with him. They set him up, and they kept trying to get him drunk, and him saying that he wants the 33,000 missing Hillary emails. Now, why did they say that? Now, I'm the only one saying this, okay? And I'm the only one, I guess, who heard Christopher Wray's testimony. Christopher Wray says he has all 33,000 missing Hillary emails, both on a jump drive and on separate CD discs. They were going to give that jump drive to George Papadopoulos to frame Trump as Trump helped the Russians hack Hillary's server. That's a setup that was done from the beginning. Hillary's server was a pay-to-play operation controlled by Imran Awan and the head IT guy for the Democratic National Committee, who was in control of those servers, which controlled the George Soros donations and the George Soros orders to Podesta and Hillary, Donna Brazile, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and the entire Democratic, including Bernie. Sorry, Bernie. Sorry to have to throw you in there, but you took orders from Soros too. You took money from him. And they hid it. And that's why they will never, ever show you the content, and why they didn't take a picture of the content of the Democratic National Committee server. But going back, Christopher Steele was Bruce Orr's good buddy. He'd worked with him for years. He hated Trump. He came over with instructions from Sir Richard Dearlove. Who does Richard Dearlove get his instructions from? He got them from
Mark Malloch Brown.
Correct. And
The Queen.
Yes, through Jeffrey.
Oh, Jeffrey Patty.
Patty. And who does Lord Malloch Brown work for? Who was he the chairman of the first, well, I'll just have to say it, George Soros's Open Society Foundation. No one could be worse than George Soros than perhaps Lord Malloch Brown, who also controls our election devices, who also controls Optech, who actually invented Optech in Venezuela to help that election with Jimmy Carter. Then they spread it throughout the whole world, and now controls all of our elections. Optech, that is Lord Malloch Brown, that is George
Everybody,
Soros.
you went out there and voted yesterday, and you think you had a paper ballot, but once that thing is scanned into the digital realm, these bad actors control those numbers.
Either Trump's 8 out of 8 is a red tsunami because of him, or because Americans for Innovation and Aim for Truth revealed Optech and revealed Mitt Romney and his son's connections to, what's he got? He's got the InterCivic Heart, or does he have the Smartmatic? Is Malloch Brown, and then it was Sequoia, and then it was Diebold.
But whoever it is, they all have the Optech software.
Every one of them.
So they all do, and they're all corrupt.
Which can be manipulated by a junior high school hacker using PC Anywhere, because that's what they use to fix the machines if they break. It is the most ridiculously junior high school attempt. We need to stop that.
Thomas.
But what proved to me today was when Kobach won by 121 votes, it isn't, Trump won because it was a landslide, and the cheated amounts of votes still didn't cause him not to win, and because he hired Paul Manafort to win the Electoral College votes during that convention, which everyone said was not going to happen. So Paul Manafort, just like Roger Stone, were very useful people for him, just like Michael Cohen. He's using all these people, and he's now finding out how corrupt they are, and he's finding out how corrupt the Senate Intelligence Committee is, and how corrupt Schiff is down in the Congressional Intelligence Committee, and what heroes Devin Nunes and Jim Jordan and Chuck Grassley and Meadows and Gates and a bunch of them, but there's like a dozen of these people. We thought at first, and it's possible, that they did this because they want to win the midterms, and they always do this. They do grandstanding. They bring out investigations of the other party, blah, blah. No. I think it's changed. I think we are reaching the point that we are beginning to see the dominoes fall for the critical mass, and the critical mass will be the 2018 midterms. If there is, and we predict that there will be, a Trump red tsunami, and he gets people like Dead McCain out of the Senate, and Dead Wood out of the Senate, and Dead Wood out of the Congress, and Jim Jordan elected, our hero as
Speaker of the House.
Speaker of the House, Jim Jordan, elect him. He could save the day. He already is saving the day. It's literally coming down to a handful of true patriots who are creating the second American Revolution. And some of you who are listening are those people. And what we're saying to you is, thank you. Do not give up. And the other thing I want to point out, I'm so excited, Betsy. I didn't even talk to the conclave about this before because I just had to say all this stuff. This is strictly from me. We are so excited by the things that we're seeing because things are exploding on so many fronts that the dominoes didn't start from just one domino. There were many dominoes that all started to fall at different times, and there's whole sets of dominoes falling. And like Dianne Feinstein, her and her Chinese consultant, who was not just, she said, her chauffeur. That is such a big friggin' lie. This guy has basically been her controller, her Chinese controller, since day one practically with her.
Makes me think of China Chow, the gal that's married to Mitch McConnell, who's the Department of Transportation Secretary.
Mitch has to go down.
Mitch McConnell.
Mitch McConnell and his 267 obstructed bills that came to the Senate that he never allowed to get on the floor. Things are done by politics in the Congress, and it's disgusting. They're not done by democracy or even representative republic, nothing like that. It is disgusting what goes on there. And until we have a new Republican speaker and Jim Jordan and a new Republican Senate majority leader and get Mitch McConnell in jail with his wife, we're not going to get anywhere because those are the two of the biggest obstructionists, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell that Trump is facing. And these are the battles people don't even understand. He's winning every day.
Well, the news isn't going to report it. They're propaganda machines for the very enemy that we are fighting. And I do want to say, before you move on, because I know you're full of all kinds of information, big shout out to everybody who got to the polls, because that's what you can do as citizens right now. The stronger we are in getting to the polls and voting the way Trump tweets are reading and recommending candidates, the faster we're going to get this changed in Congress, and then Trump can make the big changes.
The Center for Self-Governance just put out a writ of mandamus, which can be adapted for anybody in any election, and it is the right of we the people to control elections, not the federal government, and for them to put it in the hands of Jimmy Carter's rogue CIA, started in Venezuela, controlled by Lord Malik Brown and the Queen's Privy Council, is simply disgusting. That's George Sorosism. Soros has taken over the European Union. We pointed this out to you again and again. It was his boats, as we, the only ones, who pointed out all those boats, those were all his. He used rogue companies and flew false flags, and a lot of them were from Germany, from Hamburg, exactly as we told you. So Soros and Angela Merkel have sold out Germany and the European Union, not only through the Nord Stream 2, Nord Stream 1, behind the closed doors deal, and Nord Stream 2, their other deal, which is what Trump is breaking the back of right now. She has sold out European Union because why? They now vote to get all of the migrants out because George Soros from one day to the next decided he just needed $80 billion in ransom money from the European Union, and he would keep all of these invaders in North Africa because it was his ships that were illegally picking them up from the shore, not from boats, folks. Those were nice staged pictures. No, George Soros has operated this. He fed them all along the way when they can't come out of Turkey.
Well, listen, I have to say this, Thomas. When you look at the pictures, the the refugees, they're landing on the beach. You look at the angle of the camera and you go, well, who's taking that picture? Because if it was a surprise attack, you would be on the shore and you'd be taking it with your cell phone. But these are professional pictures taken behind the boats.
A single one of these pictures in the old days, 10, 20 years ago, would have brought that photographer world fame. Now you'll see no bylines for any pictures.
Yeah, but it has to be staged. It has
That's
to be
the point.
planned.
That's the point. It's all propaganda.
So if you just look, pay attention to the way pictures are presented to you, you can see the fake news right there.
They don't even tell you who they came from, when they were done.
Yeah.
No one gets any credit for it. And the stories they give you are all generated through a system called AVID, which we have been exposing lately. It's also called ISIS management. And on election night, so that you have no headache of waking up in the morning not knowing who's elected, so everybody can capitulate that night based upon false numbers, you have Leader Plus, which are 10% owned. By who?
Richard C. Bloom, husband of Dianne Feinstein.
I would think that would be, is there a name for that? Shouldn't she recuse herself? Isn't that some kind of collusion or corruption? There's a lot of C words I think of
I see foreign interference as well. Don't forget that.
This is the worst that I have ever seen in American history. Not only has Trump, in 18 months or so, created the best statistics for our economy, for basically the racial discrimination that Obama promoted, especially against Muslims, since he killed 2 million of them and put 80 million of them into refugee status, and then they say that he was in some way deserving of the Nobel Peace Prize. No, the Nobel War Prize, which, remember, it came from gunpowder, so the Nobel Peace Prize is a fraud in itself. But the point is, he was a fraud, and everything that comes out like, oh, now we see what really happened. We see that it was Obama who did these things. He is the one who said, yes, I'm going to weaponize my entire White House intelligence community and every agency I can against Trump for Hillary. And they are in bed with the Russians. We now know the Russians. We can name them, but the issue is John McCain is the one who brought the list of those Russians to the FBI early on in the game when he was also constructing the Russian dossier with the help of Henry Kerner and with the help of David Kramer and Andrew Wood and Alexander Downer and, that's right, John Weiner, the personal friend of Hillary Clinton, and Victoria Nuland. It was all staged because Victoria Nuland said she got a call from the Ukraine, an anonymous call, where somebody said that Trump, unfortunately, Russia has compromising material on Trump. And so then John Brennan heard of that, and they called it, sorry to have to say it, but they called it the P document, the P video, excuse me. So they sent Sergei Millian, spent untold amounts of money to people like Christopher Steele, Stefan Halper, Felix Sater, all of these Russians, Natalia, everyone was sent money from John Brennan, hundreds of thousands of dollars he spent to gather up this video. They finally find the video long afterwards, and it's a fake. Thank you, John Brennan. Crossfire Hurricane. You were supposed to have been looking into George Papadopoulos, but that was a frame-up with someone you were paying. We have pointed out that Stefan Halper, who works directly also with Sir Christopher Dearlove and the same people in Britain we mentioned.
No, Richard Dearlove.
I'm sorry.
Or Christopher.
I'm sorry. Richard Dearlove.
Okay, I didn't know.
And Christopher Steele.
Christopher Steele, okay.
They're all in the Cambridge Institute, and that had to close down because of their corruption, because of their Russian corruption. And Joseph Mifsud, their Maltese Italian connection, and Gaeta from the FBI who went over to meet with them. Anyway, Peter Strzok went over to meet with them. Everyone was involved in this. Anybody who was anybody was involved in this. You were a willing participant. You were a team member of Hillary Victory Team. Because why? You used every resource that you had and you got permission from Obama himself. Susan Rice said it, that from early on, that she was involved in the committee along with Comey, who again and again publicly tried to smear Trump with one ridiculous thing after the next. But Christopher Steele was Comey's ace in the hole. They did not need a FISA warrant, folks. They started the Christopher Steele nonsense and the Russian dossier nonsense back in January of 2016 with McCain and all those people I just mentioned, and the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Democratic National Committee and the White House itself and the CIA and the FBI and the DOJ and the State Department. That's a fact now. As soon as somebody does what we've done, which is simply put the story together, you will see that this conspiracy is the most obvious conspiracy and the largest conspiracy in American history, and that Trump at the same time in those 18 months has brought us to the best place in American economic, social, cultural, political, trade, and many other aspects of U.S. history. So at the same time that he is fighting this evil that is becoming revealed, and everybody's saying, why doesn't he go after everybody? He's turning on light after light. As soon as one comes after him, he turns the light on, the Trump effect shines on them, and they get burned up. And this is going to keep happening till August the 21st. And by August the 21st, remember, we predicted to you that in this 1 year, Trump would turn it all around. And we now hear Devin Nunes say that when the 20 pages, just the 20 that he has outlined, the 20 that he has requested Trump to declassify, which Trump already said he would, both before and recently implied that, and he will, as soon as he's finding out who his real enemies in the intelligence community are every time that he has to declassify one of these things. But Peter Strzok, whose security clearance had been taken once he joined the Mueller team, got it back, as well as ability to work in the FISA courts and control them, write national security letters, and basically out-Trump Trump. So Peter Strzok was the ace in the hole, as we pointed out from the beginning, all the way through to this very moment with the Mueller crossfire hurricane attempt to overthrow Trump. But here's the deal. The Christopher Steele dossier was never supposed to be released. And if you don't get this, you won't get the details, and you'll be confused like some of our favorite writers. Christopher Steele had already been exposed because he's an idiot. And he had given copies to the wrong people, and John McCain's copy, which we pointed out, had gone rogue and gone all over the place. And so copies were being given to journalists. And so when BuzzFeed printed it, it wasn't because they were the first to get it. It was because they were supposed to go out at the same time that others who received it through John McCain accidentally had already got it and said they were releasing it because they started releasing sentences from it. And we pointed this out when it happened. How can a certain news agency have sentences from this dossier that doesn't exist, that was supposed to be the October surprise to overthrow the election, which had started all the way back in January of 2016 in the Obama administration, and with Hillary in 2015 in December with Podesta. So, Christopher Steele, why did they keep going through with the FISA warrant? Comey had already come out and said, no. Felix Sater lied when he said that Michael Cohen had a letter that was sanctions for Trump to take the sanctions off Russia, and they were doing a dirty deal behind the scenes. We know that the dossier said that Carter Page was the connection to Russia for billions of dollars. Carter Page didn't have any connections with Russia. He was there. He wished. He didn't. It was a setup. Even his invitation there to give that lecture was a setup. His being inserted into the Trump team, remember, he was an FBI asset of Comey's. Okay? So, why would they need that FISA warrant when we know that Admiral Rogers in April said that there was fantastic abuses of the NSA unmasking with FISA under the auspices of the FISA court when they really weren't true. In other words, abuse, massive abuse. We have yet to hear of that, by the way, and I'm the only one saying this. We have yet to hear of that abuse, except in the reports of the IG in December 2016. I've read them myself. They were all enumerated. And we did article after article on it. No one else did. except when they first came out, people printed parts of it, but no one pointed out that the FISA court should have been shut down in 2016. So they had to do a quick fix. And I could go into the judge and her corruption, but the point is they said they did the quick fix. They didn't, but it pointed out that there had been no domestic FISA court warrants pulled by Comey at all ever in 2016. Well, wait a second. What about the FISA court warrants for Carter Page? Title I, which meant a confirmed foreign spy, when he was in fact a confirmed paid FBI asset. Why did that happen? Because Christopher Steele blew it. Because he was so anxious with, and Bruce Orr and his wife, what's her first name? Nellie Orr, who worked for Fusion GPS along with Glenn Simpson, along with Cody Shearer, along with others in the Democratic National Committee and the FBI. They all were so proud of that junk they gave to Christopher Steele, and he got so excited, and he was paid so much money, and the framing of Stephen Halper was going so well that he got carried away at the same time that the McCain copies got dispersed. So he, Steele, was meeting repeatedly with members of the FBI and early on Bruce Orr, and members of the Democratic National Committee with news agencies, and he would tell them the stories so they would go back and all repeat the same kind of thing that they wrote down, but they didn't really see the document. Tell me that those news agencies have not committed a conspiracy that needs to close each one of them. That would be the Washington Post, the New York Times, the New Yorker, the CNN, Mother Jones, BuzzFeed, and Yahoo News. They all must be closed down.
Well, what about Facebook, Apple, Google? What about them?
They stole their. I did it again. They stole their. They stole the IBM Eclipse Foundation stole that intellectual property, those patents, those copyrights from Leader Technology. That can all be rolled backwards, and it can be turned into a utility once that bill is paid through the Miller Act. No problem. Pay the bill. All that starts to fall.
Pay the bill. Close these companies. They're nothing but fraud.
People say close the Mueller investigation. No. The longer it goes on, the more is revealed. Yeah. It's so beautiful. It's a laugh a day. And it just shows Trump is not going to interview with that imbecile. He's proving that he is a criminal. Why would Trump interview with that criminal? And what does Giuliani say? He needs to end it now. He needs to end it now. He needs to end it now because 60 days from the election, if he continues this witch hunt, when there has been no counter special investigation to investigate the Democrats, because no indictment indicates any Democrat did anything wrong, and it's Democrats who did all of this.
Yet the whole world sees all that you just described.
And they're all fake. All the indictments are fake. The Manafort Gates stuff is a thing that goes back 5 years and 5 separate investigations. The Russians who were indicted will never show up, and the one company that was indicted show up and is making a fool of Mueller. And the other people, that's because they tricked them, because that's what this special counsel is about. And when you impanel a grand jury, it's simply to trick people so that you can get them online to the grand jury. So Trump is not going to testify. If he goes beyond 60 days before the election, that is called political rigging. That's why Comey got fired, because he kept doing the Hillary Clinton email investigation. Though it was an investigation, it was the mid-year exam, and she was not even listed. She was never once listed. Her name is in none of the exam, none of the reports. She is listed as a high-level administrator or something like that. You can't even tell it's her. And then the Huma Abedin, that was all Peter Strzok. Keeping the Huma Abedin espionage coming to light, keeping Hillary's espionage coming to light, keeping the 33,000 missing Hillary messages. Those were the ones that were being used for the setup and the framing of Stephen Halper of George Papadopoulos. That's what they kept getting him to say, 33,000 emails, and we'll give it to you. The Russians will give it to you. Just say it out loud. Say you want it. Can you say it? Here, have another beer. Can you say that? It is embarrassing how bad of a job Comey did. Christopher Steele did just as bad his job. So when he went too far and they had to drop him after the first FISA warrant, they agreed to have 3 more after they knew that he had basically breached the entire investigation.
Wrap it up and bring it home.
So what we are seeing now is the tide is going out and it's going out so that we're seeing the bottom of the ocean. I believe a red tsunami's coming. And when that tsunami hits after the midterms, if we can get better control of the Senate and the House, we can actually get our republic back.